So UFC 304 just got announced officially with the main event and the co-main events. I mean, of course, the event was announced earlier, but now we know what the event is going to be based around, with the main event being Leon Edwards defending his title against Belal Muhammad, with the co-main event being Tom Aspinall fighting Blaydes, defending that interim title. And it has been a long time since the interim champion has defended the title, especially when the champion has been healthy and ready to fight. That's definitely going to get some people talking. And then, of course, Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett was also announced, and that's also a pretty big fight. I'm going to talk about all three fights in this video here, and also talk about the card, because I think this is a pretty good card. Like, I mean, it's pretty stacked, I feel, especially this main card. This is a very good pay-per-view main card. You've got some really big names from the UK, from Europe on the card for the local fans, but then also, not only that, you've got some of the bigger names from the UK for international fans all over, as well as just some big names in general, like Makayev versus Cup's a pretty massive fight at the top of the rankings at 125. Allen versus Chikadze, we all know that's going to be a banger. We know that Bobby Green versus Pimblett's going to be fun as well. Someone's probably going to get finished in that matchup. And then the co-main and the main. Titles are on the line, even though it is the interim title. I feel like a lot of fans right now, after what John Jones is kind of pulling, might genuinely see Aspinall as the champion if he does defeat Blaydes. But I'm going to talk about that after talking about the main event. It's finally been announced. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. That guy in my comments who has been commenting on every single video, the first on most of them as well, must have notifications on, so shout out to them. I believe his username is QUI with the just a blacked out profile pic. He's gonna be so happy right now because his hero, Belal Muhammad, is going to be able to avenge that no contest against Leon Edwards for the title. But I'm going to break his heart, because I do think Leon Edwards does win the fight. But let's kind of just talk about it as it is. I'm excited for it. I know that a lot of people are kind of going to be thinking, oh, like it's a boring fight, because Leon Edwards, I understand, he doesn't really have the most exciting fights in the world. And neither does Belal Muhammad, to be honest. But I do think we are going to get a good performance, because I genuinely really do believe that Leon Edwards is one of the better strikers at 170 pounds. And you could call me delusional. I do think that Leon Edwards does beat almost everybody in the rankings. In fact, I have gone out there and said I would pick Leon Edwards to defeat Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, I'm willing to change that tune depending on how Shavkat looks against Jack Della Maddalena if that fight does happen. But I do really rate Leon Edwards super highly, and probably a lot higher than most people do. But anyway, I do think that Leon Edwards is going to go out there and beat Belal Muhammad. I know that he did kind of have a Colby Covington that didn't look that great in his last matchup, and he didn't finish him, but he kind of had opportunities to. It was kind of an odd fight, but before that, you can't deny what he did to Usman over 5 rounds, and then he did defeat Usman with that head kick after losing the fight, except for the first. Belal Muhammad can't strike with Leon Edwards. I do think that Leon Edwards is probably the best technical striker at 170 pounds in the UFC. And maybe that could come as a shock to some people, but at the end of the day, I do genuinely believe that he has proven that in his career. He's unbelievably accurate on the feet. He picks his shots, and that's kind of what makes him boring, is he's not going out there and throwing a ton of volume and hoping something lands. He's picking shots that he thinks are going to land, and he's got like an insane striking accuracy in the UFC, and because of that, whereas I feel like Belal Muhammad, he has shown much more improved striking in his last couple fights. You know, he did defeat Gilbert Burns over 5 rounds on the feet for a lot of that fight as well, which was quite impressive, even though it was an injured Burns. But before that, he did knock out Sean Brady, or TKO'd him against the cage, I guess, which is a win that's aged pretty well, because Brady just dominated Gastelum on the feet. But Brady was looking really good on the feet in that fight as well. It was competitive in the striking, but you could maybe argue that Brady was a little bit up before Belal ended up catching him. And to be honest with you, I feel like Brady just kind of folded and kind of gave up in that moment there. But yes, I feel like Belal Muhammad, if he was to beat Leon Edwards, he's going to have to try and take him down. But my counter to that is Kamaru Usman couldn't do it in the rematch. And another counter I have to that as well is Colby Covington couldn't really do it either. And on paper, Colby Covington was, on paper, a stylistic nightmare matchup for Leon Edwards, and you do have to refer, I feel like, to the first fight as well, which was a long time ago now, 3 years ago. Edwards was beating the piss out of Belal Muhammad on the feet in that one there. He did land a pretty flush head kick on Belal, the kind of same sort of kick that Kamaru Usman ended up eating and, well, didn't really eat it. But I do want to see Edwards more active, man. Like, Edwards, you're almost getting 33 years old. I was kind of hoping that when he did defeat Kamaru Usman, he was going to be an active champion. We kind of have seen that. You know, a 7-month break between the Usman fight, and then what's that? Like a 9-month break between the Covington and Usman fight. I guess maybe you could put some of the blame on Covington for kind of dragging it out. And now after that, we're going to have, what's this, going to be like a 7-month break from that fight, 6-7 months. So that's pretty good activity, I'd feel like, from Leon Edwards there. I would really like to see him defend the belt at the end of the year if he does defeat Leon Edwards. And then for Belal Muhammad, I feel like Belal Muhammad could maybe defend the belt like in Dubai, but the problem is it's in October, so maybe it's going to be too soon from late July. But there's that Saudi Arabia card rumored to be at the start of 2025, which is going to be apparently a very stacked pay-per-view card, which Turkey Al Sheikh has been talking about recently on the MMA Hour. I feel like Belal would probably like to defend there, but he also was born and raised in Chicago, so maybe he wants to bring a card to Chicago. I don't know, but I feel like maybe that's something that Belal would plan for doing. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Obviously, I will break down the fight closer to the time with a prediction, official prediction, but I don't think that my mind is going to change. I do like Leon Edwards a lot in this fight. I do think he is the significantly better striker. I do think that he is showing that he can keep the fight on the feet, and it wouldn't be bad to see Leon Edwards try and make a statement and try and get a finish, because come on, man. People are talking you down, Leon. You know, I mean, I can only defend him for so long. I genuinely do believe that Leon Edwards is the best welterweight on the planet. If not, we'll see. We'll see about these other contenders that are definitely going to be coming up soon. Tom Aspinall is going to be fighting Curtis Blaydes and defending his interim title, and I feel like there's a whole conversation that you could have about this that doesn't actually regard the fight itself and does regard the situation that we're going to be having right now with Jon Jones waiting for Stipe Miocic. I mean, it's a little bit disappointing, I will be honest, kind of seeing that Jon Jones doesn't want to fight the interim champion and he'd rather fight Stipe, who, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, I don't think Stipe has fought for 3 years, and I don't think he's won a fight for 4 years, and he wants to fight an old Stipe who's going to be rusty for sure, and not fight the young up-and-coming interim champion. I mean, this is a conversation that people are having on Twitter a lot. A lot of people share this opinion, but I don't really want to get into that too much. I want to talk about the fight in this video, and to talk about the fight, it's a rematch. I guess you could say that Aspinall was kind of done a little bit dirty by the first fight because, well, at the end of the day, it was an injury 15 seconds into the fight. And although the fight did only last 15 seconds, it kind of did look like it was going to be building into a pretty exciting matchup. And there's no doubt in my mind that Tom Aspinall is probably going to want to try and get this one back on Curtis Blaydes, because it does still count as a loss on his record. But as for the fight as well, I feel like Curtis Blaydes does introduce a very interesting stylistic matchup for Tom Aspinall, because we all kind of know Aspinall for his really good boxing. He just knocked out Sergey Pavlovich, which was amazing. I did actually pick Sergey to win that fight. I'll put my hands up and say that. But I didn't think that Sergey was going to lose at his own game. And that's what Aspinall did in that fight, which was amazing. But then Curtis Blaydes obviously did go out there and did get the win over Aspinall, but then got knocked out by Sergey in his own right, with a dumb game plan, to be honest with you. He just boxed with Sergey. But then he did defeat JL Almeida, who was looking amazing in that first round. I think a lot of people were kind of shocked with just the ability that Almeida was able to have with that wrestling. And then I think Curtis Blaydes just kind of started hammer fisting him against the back of the head, like kind of like right behind the ear, which is the sweet spot, and knocked him out at the start of that second round. So good win for both, but they're both coming off, to be honest with you. And Aspinall did say that he would want to fight Curtis Blaydes sometime soon after that performance. I think it's a fight that makes sense in the rankings. These guys, I don't think they've got beef. I think they've got mutual respect, but they both do want to have that rematch, because I feel like for Curtis Blaydes, I know he was the victor in the first fight. He probably doesn't really feel like he won the fight. Like he did say in the post-fight interview, I think like his exact wording was, we wanted to like see who had the better stuff, isn't like who has the better skills. But as for the fight, I think Aspinall is going to be the better striker, although Curtis Blaydes has actually developed very good boxing. And Curtis Blaydes could go out there and out wrestle Aspinall. Aspinall does, of course, have that grappling. I think he's got. I'm not going to spread misinformation on the internet. I know he's got a pretty decent bout in BJJ, and he does a pretty good grappler, and we have seen that kind of very briefly in the UFC at the start of his career, before he did kind of start knocking everybody out. Of course, Aspinall was going to become a boxer. That was kind of his plan, and then I guess he found MMA, or something along those lines happened, and the rest is history. But Blaydes is interesting because he's a really, really good he's a really good wrestler, but he didn't wrestle against Sergey Pavlovich when he got knocked out. Obviously, he didn't have the opportunity to offensively wrestle against Almeida, and even then, Almeida is just a really, really good pure grappler, so wrestling in that fight isn't very good. He beat Dalkaus on the feet, which isn't that good of a win, but at the time it was, and at the time it was kind of like a statement for Blaydes to show off how good his boxing is. But I want to see Blaydes in this matchup go back to what got him to the dance, go back to what got him in the got him in the rankings, and that is go to the wrestling. But ultimately, I do think that Aspinall is too fast. I think, and I'm going to say as well, I think Aspinall does beat John Jones. I do. I think Aspinall's too fast for him. I think he's got too good of a movement. I think his boxing technique is better than Blaydes, and I think we have just seen him go out there in a firefight against a guy who is no doubt more powerful than Curtis Blaydes, who no doubt has a longer reach than Curtis Blaydes, and beat him at his own game. So we know that Tom Aspinall can go out there into the fire and win a striking matchup like that. And I think that if it becomes something like that, I think Blaydes is going to be able to get knocked out in that one. I feel like if Blaydes wrestles, he will have significantly more success than striking, and that's definitely where you could have a conversation where maybe Blaydes could get it done, because Blaydes is an incredible wrestler for the weight class, but ultimately, I don't know how tested that's going to be for Aspinall. I think Aspinall, even though maybe if Blaydes does wrestle, he's not going to have that many moments on the feet. I think Aspinall probably will still kind of come out on top on that one there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I definitely broke down that fight for a lot longer than I did the Edwards-Belal fight. That I'm excited for it, man. I really am. And then we have the more recently announced fight. Well, they're all announced at the same time, but Bobby Green fighting Paddy Pimblett. Two people on Tapology have already given their predictions. I do think that Bobby Green is going to upset Paddy Pimblett in... I don't know if Manchester is in the area of Liverpool, but England, I know for sure, is where Paddy's from, so it is going to be a very much home crowd for Paddy Pimblett. And I think Paddy Pimblett's really bad at striking. I genuinely believe that. And he gassed out against Tony Ferguson. I know Bobby Green recently beat Tony Ferguson as well, but against Tony, he gassed out in that fight in that third round before he got the takedown and won the fight and ended up kind of surviving that third round, I guess. Ferguson was managing to piece him up. Pimblett gassed in that fight. And another thing as well that you see from Pimblett is his striking defense does not exist. It's not there. And I know that he can wrestle and he can grapple, and that's what he should do, especially in this fight, because Bobby Green's a very tricky boxer. We just saw what Bobby Green did to Jim Miller. And I know that you could say, oh, Jim Miller's like 40 years old and Paddy Pimblett's 29 years old up and coming. Pimblett does leave his chin way up in the air, like he doesn't tuck it whatsoever, and it's weird because his coaches apparently have been telling him to do that, and Pimblett has gone on record and said, I just don't listen to them, I don't want to do that. Scousers don't get knocked out, I guess. The thing is, it's not that hard to tuck your chin, as really as that. In fact, it's probably like the first thing I think that they teach you when you go to boxing. I can attest to this because I think it was about this time last year I was actually in training. No, it wasn't. I wasn't training, but I wasn't in training for that boxing fight that I did have at the end of the year. But I can test. Trust me. The first thing they teach you is your footwork, obviously, first. But then also keep that chin tucked, and then they teach you how to throw a jab and cross and all this other stuff. That's kind of how you get the basics going. Boxing basics. Paddy Pimblett does not have his hands, his chin low, and he's going to have to wrestle Bobby Green. I think that Bobby Green's going to knock him out. I know that Bobby Green's not really a guy that you do just go out there and predict him to knock people out. I just think that Pimblett's striking defense is not there. He's open to getting hit to the body. He's got a bad gas tank, like we saw against Tony Ferguson. I don't know. I don't like the matchup at all for Paddy Pimblett. I think that the Renato Moicano fight was a lot more winnable for Paddy Pimblett, in my opinion, because at least that's a grappler versus grappler fight. Or even like there were other people calling out Paddy Pimblett that he probably should have entertained instead of this, because I feel like maybe he's rushing himself into the rankings. I don't know. Even if he does get past Bobby Green, who does he fight next? Like, is he going to fight Dan Hooker, for example? I think Dan Hooker is it would be able to beat Paddy Pimblett. Or does he fight Jalen Turner? You know, a much more powerful, a guy that knocked out Bobby Green. Like what are we doing? And I don't know. I don't know. I've got a pretty negative kind of feeling about this fight for Paddy. I just think it's a bad matchup. But he could have success with that grappling. We have seen Bobby Green taken down before, but in general, he does kind of have that style where his hands are so low that, you know, his hands are low. So he doesn't have to kind of move his hands down and react to defend the takedown. They're already there, I guess, to get the underhooks. But yeah, I think that Bobby Green on the feet as well, he moves so fast, so he's not really going to give that many like good opportunities to shoot a takedown on him either. I think Bobby Green is going to catch Paddy Pimblett. He just kind of leaves his chin way up in the air. And then another fight that was announced, well, not officially, but a fight that is going to happen, I think. I'm pretty confident. Owen Elliott versus Preston Parsons is going to be on the prelims, obviously. And aside from what we've got here, I have brushed over these fights before. I think Molly McCann should be able to beat Bruno Brazil. I don't know though. Shauna Bannon versus Ravena Oliveira is interesting because Bannon is like a former kickboxing world champion, and she didn't look like it in her last fight. I can tell you that much. I don't know about that one. I haven't done any tape study for that fight. I haven't really done any tape study for any of the fights because the event is in July. But I'm gonna give you guys my early picks. I think Nathaniel Wood should be able to outlast Pineda. Pineda's really, really powerful in round one, but he gasses out, and I think that Wood should be able to survive that because he is a very skilled fighter. I have said before in probably this in my last video actually that Manol Karp, I think he does beat Makayev. More detail in that last video. And Allen versus Chikadze, haven't talked about it. 91% of people are picking Arnold Allen. Wow, I am going to pick Arnold Allen to win the fight. But I think it could maybe get caught out by Chikadze. I do, because Arnold is, in the past, I feel like he has changed this a little bit, has been quite a low volume striker, and he has been out volumed, but because he's got so much power, he's been able to capitalize on that and win by damage. I don't know. I think he should be able to beat Chikadze, though. It's not an easy fight for Arnold Allen. It is striker versus striker. Should be fun. But yeah, I do like Allen. I don't know. 91% of people are picking him, though. Chikadze's got a shot. Who did he beat recently? Alex. Yeah, okay, whatever. Arnold Allen should beat him then. Yeah, with that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.